All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we are running a little bit behind. I won't go into too much detail about myself. Just know that I've been in the industry for about 30 years. I've spent a good number of those years working with JP Morgan. And after leaving JP Morgan, starting my own company and then getting involved with HART, which is the Housing Authority Retirement Trust. Fantastic group. It's been an awesome last 10, 11 years dealing specifically with the housing authority groups around the country. HART is one of those groups been around since 1970, 475 plus plans, 7,500 plus participants who are owners in that trust. So it's an awesome group to work with. I love working with the housing authority, and what we want to talk about today, of course, is so important when we talk about how to deal with, or how to get through the pandemic and plan for your future. It's never been more important to look at those things. I will tell you that even before the pandemic, it was important to make sure that we were looking at what it is that we're doing for the future. Because whatever it is that we decide to do and end up with in our retirement account, tied in with other types of income sources, which may be something like an IRA, it could be a Roth IRA, it might be a rental property, might be the Social Security, whatever it might be, that in the end ultimately becomes your employer, right? Because that's where you're generating all of your income. So preparing for the future is so important. And I know with all of the constant changing that we're seeing, especially in the economic markets, it's sometimes tough, right? And so even though I've been in the industry for many, many years, I rely on resources to help give me information that I can share to people that are trying to plan for their retirement future. One of the groups that I use, and I know it's probably pretty hard to see, and I'm kind of putting it up there just to show you, but it's the group that one of the groups that I'm going to reference today, just so you know where the information is coming from, it's called the Society of Actuaries, and these folks have been around, I think, somewhere between like 1890, 1898, something like that. So they've been around a long, long time. And they stand by 4 principles: objectivity, quality, relevance, and quantification. So when I'm sharing this information, it's just wanted you to know where that stuff is coming from so that you have a reference point. But when it comes speaking directly to what's been going on, especially with the virus, this shows you just how quickly things have changed. And how it impacts what it is that you're doing, and the importance of making sure that you have a plan, that you implement that plan, you stay diligent, and that you review it on an annual basis. Just in that order, it's very important. But just to give you a kind of a little bit of a reference point, in the beginning, right when we're talking about 2020, the economy added about 465,000 jobs. And that was in the first 2 months. Unemployment was at 3.5%. And of course, the S&P 500, the Dow, and all of the indices actually were moved up in a very positive way. Within the time frame between mid-February and mid-March, the market had fallen off into a recession, off 34%, and unemployment rose to 14.7. And it just shows you how quickly information is being shared and how that impacts the markets, and ultimately how that impacts what it is that you're trying to do as a person that's planning for retirement. Now, for folks that are just starting out, younger employees that are starting out, maybe not as much of an issue, but just definitely something that they need to pay attention to. But as you're moving along your retirement timeline, the importance of sitting down and, like I had mentioned before, about having a plan, implementing a plan, being diligent with the plan, and then reviewing it has never been more important. Those are such key things to be looking at when it comes to retirement. One of the things that they also had put out, excuse me, and even more reason to want to sit down and look at it, what it is that you're doing. Still today, the numbers that are coming out, and they're kind of staggering in the sense that folks that are planning for retirement, it has never been more paramount to sit down and do the things you need to do to make sure that things are going in the right direction. And they talk about that today about, not necessarily that some people have a plan, but actually making sure that they implement the plan and stay focused on that. So today, what I want to make sure that we do is we walk through a short presentation. There's a couple participation pieces. I'm hoping that Michael and everybody, Angela, was able to get the information out to you. But we'll walk through that information. And I guess the way that I look at this whole presentation is I'm going to kind of step back. And one of the things that I've always shared with my kids, which is I used to always tell them to never assume. And it was really more of a athletic metaphor that I used. And what I kind of meant by that, which was when you're playing the game, whether it's softball or baseball or whatever it was to never assume, just to be where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing when you're supposed to be doing it. And that was just so important. Not that you couldn't trust your team, right? That you couldn't count on your team, but just for you to be prepared for whatever is going to happen. And I think that's a big thing to remember here when it comes to this, is just to never assume and to just be prepared, put a plan together, and know that in the end, you're the winner. You're going to win this. And I'm going to show you in one of the worksheets how we can identify where it is that you exactly stand, where you stand in what you have to this point, the number of accounts that you have, and whether there may or may not be a shortfall. And that is huge, right? Because I believe in total financial wellness. And look, you have a great plan. There's a lot of people, again, like I said before, I've spent many years with JP Morgan. They had a 401k plan. The participant had to put into the plan. They had to manage the plan. You've got something where the money is going into the plan. You have great resources or options within that plan. And we can help you. We can help you figure out those things moving forward. But within this particular presentation, I will work through that worksheet that will help identify if there is a shortfall. And then I'll kind of give you a couple options as far as some solutions. And then it's up to you to decide how you want to do that going forward. I know that between Hart and myself, we'd be more than glad to answer any questions that you have. You can email me, you can call me, we can video conference, whatever it is. I will help you get that so that you can keep moving forward. Because I think the greatest thing that I've learned or been able to witness over all these years, and especially with the housing authority, when someone comes in and I'm able to help them identify where they're at and recognize that, yeah, if there is a little shortfall, we have a solution. If there isn't a shortfall, the recognition in their body, right? The shoulders come down, the whole thing, it's a great feeling. And so I'm looking forward to helping you do that. So today we're going to jump into the presentation. The first thing that I want to ask you, and it's a pretty darn important question, how confident are you when it comes to your retirement income? Is that something that you've had an opportunity to sit down and look at and think about? And if you haven't, while I'm going through the presentation, you can kind of think of a number that you might have had in your head. If not, we are going to be able to help you walk through that whole process and kind of identify where it is that you're at and how we can get you to the goal when you decide to retire. A statistic that I got from the EBRI, the Employee Benefit Research Institute, it's, again, another resource and another group that has been around for a very, very long time. And when you look at the slide, it says basically that nearly 50% of the people that have responded aren't as comfortable or confident that they're going to be able to retire the way they want to. Again, part of that's, the ebbs and flows of the markets, maybe not taking the time to actually sit down and look at what it is they have, or reach out to somebody that can say, hey, look, I can give you some guidance moving forward. But the thing is that that's a big number. And every time I see that, my goal, every time I sit down at a housing authority, I sit down with an individual or I do a presentation, my goal is to make sure that I change that number, right? Or I find a way to help you change that number. So it's, again, it's a number that's out there. Hasn't changed as much as I would like, but I'm doing everything I can to make sure that I can help the folks that are reaching out. One of the other risks that we have when it comes to retirement is longevity risk. So in your planning, when we sit down and we kind of work through this, is that, we've got to make decisions, or you have to make decisions. I can help give guidance on how we can make changes to the portfolio so that in this chart, as we live longer, that we have the assets we need to take care of ourselves. Again, I have some options and some ideas that I will share with you, but again, that's totally up to you to decide how you want to engage with that moving forward. But longevity is a number that's going to be constantly increasing with the capabilities of what's going on in the medical industry, the different things that we're curing, all of that stuff. We're living longer, healthier lives. Yeah, back when it says here, popular age is 65. Back in the day when Medicare was just being started, life expectancy was 68. So it's totally different than it was then, that it is now. And so it's a very important thing for us to make sure that we attack. The average baby boomer that's out there from 55 to 65, about 88,000. That number is actually a little bit higher, but it's a real number. And so important for me to try to find a way to elevate that number so that folks can retire the way that they want to retire. Knowing how much annual income that you want to have in retirement is, of course, a very important question, and we're going to walk through some of that today. Now, in the emails that you got about the presentation, did you guys get this piece here? Do you guys remember seeing this at all in an email? The income pie? Don't know? Okay. Well, the importance of this particular piece is it's a perspective piece. I will tell you that in presentations, which I hope in the very near future and hopefully next year, have an opportunity to be in front of a group to actually hand this out, or if you want this, I know that I can get you a copy of it just so you can see it, because it's a good piece to kind of have as a reference. But folks who are retiring at 65 and plus, this is where they're getting their income sources from. It's coming from wages and earnings, investment income, Social Security, pension and retirement, and other resources. And the reason that I like to use this and I like to share that with folks is that everyone that's on the call, or anybody that I would have in a meeting room, everyone's perspective of where they see income sources come from is different. And that means too that that's how many different ideas or ways in which somebody decides that they want to modify their account or how they want to retire is different. But the thing about this is that, I've had a lot of folks where when they look at the thing that look at the pie chart, 11.8%, for example, I've had a lot of people choose that to be Social Security, or the 26.9 to be wages and earnings, and so on and so forth. But it's an important piece to look at and to see how that impacts what people are using for retirement. Now, here are the answers to actually how that pie chart sits up. And here's why this whole piece is so important. When you look at the sources of income that you have at the top, and you can see where the percentages match up, there are two percentages that I see that are very, very important to identify. One is wages and earnings, and the other one is Social Security. And the reason that this is so important is that a lot of folks say that, hey, I'm going to retire, but I don't necessarily plan to just totally retire, but I do plan to retire, but I'd like to work in retirement. Again, that's a variable where I hope that everyone's in that situation that if they decide to be able to work, they can work, right? And then, of course, Social Security. And the reason I bring these two up is that they're the two largest pies of income that you have out there. And they are ultimately two sources of income that you don't have any control over. Okay. I mean, yes, wages and earnings. Yes, there's, if you can work, you're going to be able to work. But again, these are two variables that make up about almost 70%, 67% or something like that, is a very large percent coming from two sources that you don't have the control over. We don't have control over Social Security. Now, I know that the other day that, of course, with the political stuff going on, we're constantly getting information that Social Security is going away, or somebody's going to take it away, or they're going to get rid of it. I know to this point that Social Security is solvent until 2035. Okay. That's a fairly long time. I don't think at any point that they're going to go in and dissolve it. When they talk about privatizing and all that kind of stuff that you hear out there, let me just rest assured, I've been hearing that for many, many, many years. Okay. I've been doing this 30 years. I've been following the market since I was 17. And I will tell you that in my 20s, I was hearing that they were going to resolve it and they were going to privatize it. If at some point that ever got to be, it wouldn't be any of us that are getting closer to retirement. It might be for the kids that are just getting out of college, and they might privatize it to a certain extent, or give them more options. But at this point, that's not something that I would worry about. Social Security is going to be fine. They're going to take care of it. It's just a talking point. So I just wanted to share that with you. But again, with the pie piece, the reason that this is such an important perspective piece is that when you sit down and you think about the account that you have with the 401a or 401k or 457, whatever it is, how the plan is set up, that you work that account as hard as it can work within your risk tolerance. And I know that when I look at the folks that are on the screen, you might all say that you're aggressive investors, for example. But somebody saying they're aggressive might be saying that I will own mutual funds that have bonds in them. But the other person in the group that says, yes, I'm aggressive, and they might also own equity shares in, say, the NASDAQ. And it just depends on how you're looking at when people think about being aggressive or conservative or whatever it might be. But again, you looking at your account, finding out where your risk tolerance is, and having those dollars work as hard as they can for that time frame is so, so important. And again, I'm going to be able to share with you through the worksheet how we can walk through some of this stuff and how we can make it be impactful for you. So while you're sitting there, think about how many sources of retirement income that you do have to help you move forward when it comes to retirement. Some of the roadblocks that are out there that might be impacting how you approach, how you manage your account, taxes, for example. Are all of the resources that you have as far as income, are they all taxable? Investing in a volatile market, I know that could be a concern. I gave you a great example of how the market moved 34% to the downside in just a month. But it's still important to look at the market as a resource to grow your dollars that you have within your account faster than inflation. Because if you're not growing faster than inflation, then you're losing what's called buying power. And buying power is your ability to go and buy a gallon of milk in 2020. And what is that gallon of milk going to cost you in 2025? But the impact of inflation on product is real. And even though we've had a tough market and rebound in the market from 2007 to 2007 and 2009, when the market actually pulled back, inflation was still there, definitely still there. How we keep every dollar safe, that's kind of an open-ended question a little bit. Again, it has to do with your risk tolerance. And sometimes being too safe is extremely risky. And again, it goes back to the whole buying power thing. Changes to Social Security and Social Security benefits and Medicare and long-term care and expenses going forward. So those are some of the roadblocks that we have to look at, but definitely things that as long as you're sitting down and taking the time to look at your account, look at your plan, walk through this worksheet at least annually, you're gonna see that it's going to have a very positive impact. The risks that people face today, of course, the risk of principal, the purchasing power, longevity, the risk associated with how to utilize the assets in retirement. Again, these are all things that are out there. They're all things that, whether it's talking to Hart, whether it's talking to Ed or talking to myself, we can help you. We can help you with those, and we can help you move forward. The worksheet, So if you didn't get the first one, I'm assuming you didn't get the worksheet that you're seeing on your screen, did you? No, I'm shaking the heads. No. Okay. Well, I have it here. I did send it to them and they can forward it to you. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk through it with you and give you an example. Just give you an example of the impact that this form can actually have. When I was with JP Morgan for many, many years, I had, thousands. I was talking to people at Hallmark and Crayola and Southwest Airlines and Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola and, Walgreens, people from all over the United States. And, don't get me wrong, that it's not that there aren't folks out there that have a sheet that has a lot more detail to it, but this sheet will do the trick. It will let you know exactly where it is that you stand today. And so if there is and we identify a shortfall, we have some solutions that we can offer. If you don't, and then, for the most part, you can kind of stay on track, or you can maybe ramp it up a little bit to either, put yourself in a position where more income be generated, or maybe you think about retiring sooner. But the sheet is broken down into 3 different sections. The top section there, the first 5 questions, kind of what your annual retirement goal is. Again, early in the presentation about coming up with a number in your head. Fine, if you don't have a number, we're going to be able to walk through these questions and kind of come up with a way for us to get a number for you that you can work on. How many sources of income that you have at retirement? Again, it goes back to that pie chart that I had. Identifying the number of sources that you have. So 401a, for example, would be 1. Social Security would be 2. If you have any outside, retirement accounts or IRAs, you would add those all in. Those would be all accounts that you would utilize to generate income for yourself, for your family. The next 2 questions are very, very important. How many are taxable? How many are tax-free? I've had through the years many employees sit down with me, and then we talk about what type of income that they want to generate or what they're trying to do with their account. And then they say, well, I need to have $500 a month. And then I say, okay, well, is that after tax or before tax? And they're like, what do you mean by that? And I say, well, you got money in a 401k, you take the $500 out, you're going to be taxed on that as ordinary income. And they're like, what? I thought it was tax-free. So it's very, very important to identify that, because that's a very big thing. So like a 401a, it's taxable, right? So you know that if you need $500, you take it out, you end up with $350. Okay. So again, another reason to sit down to develop a plan, implement the plan, are diligent with the plan, or implement, be diligent, and review it. Those are all the things that you want to make sure you're doing. So then you identify the taxable accounts and the tax-free accounts. Question number 5 is what I talked about a little bit before about the roadblocks. And maybe none of them make you nervous, but by chance, you go through and say, you know what, I do think about the tax implications when I go to retirement, or I think about the volatility in the market. Those are things that you've identified that you need to make sure that you're talking to whoever your advisor is, or if it's Ed or whoever it is, how you can deal with and address the fact that if there's volatility in the market and that makes you nervous, how is that going to help you in setting up your account? Again, back to safety, changes to Social Security and Medicare. Again, it's very, 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 very hard to be so safe with your assets by putting it into some type of a guaranteed account that's getting 0.6% when inflation's at 2.5 to 3%. To grow that dollars where you want it. I get the point that you don't like volatility in the market, but you have to be look at a calculated risk within your risk tolerance to try to get you that 3 to 5, that 5 to 7% rate of return. Okay, so then the next bracket, the next piece, which is the Safe Money Builder section, when it comes to what are your sources of income. This right here, this whole piece right here is the entire pie chart. It's the entire pie chart that I shared with you earlier in the presentation for wages and earnings. If you plan to work in retirement, all of that kind of stuff, investment income, Social Security, pension, and others. So that's how the sheet breaks down. And then, of course, how we identify where the surplus or shortfall comes from. When we have an opportunity to walk through this sheet where it says 70 to 90% of what someone's currently making right here, that's the number that we're going to work on when it comes to what it is that you're trying to figure out for your income. So let's say, for example, someone that's retiring, that's working right now, say they take 70% of what their current income is, and say that their current income is $50,000. If you take $50,000 times 7, that means that they need $35,000 at retirement. And so that's how we're able to kind of start out where it is that you're at and how to work our way down through this sheet. I feel real bad that you don't actually have a copy of that form. So that makes it real tough to be able to go through it and break it down in a way that can really show you and identify you on each individual basis where it is that you stand. But what I would like to do is I would like to invite all of you to, once you do get the form, to feel free to reach out to me. I will help you walk through this form, identify your income sources, identify where it is that you stand, and if you do have a shortfall, how we can help you move forward and not have that as an issue when you get into retirement. Because I think that's the thing that folks are struggling with, and I think that's one of the problems that we see out there with a lot of people that are retiring, is that they're not able to retire on their terms. And I know for a fact this form and some of the guidance that we get from Hart with Ed and myself, we can rectify that for sure. 42% of Americans have never taken the time to sit down and to look at their retirement income needs. I do ask that you do take the time to sit down and do this. I know that a lot of times folks, and it's just how we are, right? When we plan for a trip or a vacation or a getaway or whatever it is, we will spend hours and hours and hours researching and looking at it and all that kind of stuff. And I get it because it's fun. It's fun. I know that this sometimes doesn't seem very, very much fun, but it is extremely important to sit down and to look at this, because when retirement comes and is here, at that point, there's not an awful lot that I can, potentially implement or help give guidance to move that forward. So I hope that you take the time to do that, and you again look at it multiple times throughout the year. For the folks that are younger, it's once a year is plenty, but once you get in that range from that 45 to 65 range, important to look at it, a couple times a year, make the adjustments that you need to, and do the calculations, and to help you keep moving forward. So, I urge you to, one of the things I do at the end of every presentation is I urge you to not put off things like this for another day. You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose and potentially much to gain by taking the time to look at this stuff. And again, Zoom calls are great, but doing stuff like this in person is a lot better. It's a lot more impactful. Being able to sit down and go around the table or the groups and walk through the worksheets and help you see how things are coming along is better. I hope for that in the future. And I love doing this stuff, and I've been doing this for the housing authorities for a long time, for over 10 years, and I look forward to doing it for many more. So I thank you for your attention. I hope if there's any questions that you have, I can answer them for you, and I'd be more than glad to do that at this point. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.